taking a look at next week, Brad, is all hope for a Santa Claus Rally above $100,000 gone? No $100,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year? Oh, I think you're on mute, Brad.
Sorry about that. It sure looks like it, Christine. There's some people, some perma bulls out there who are probably clinging to the hopes that we'll still have a big rally here. And of course, we did have a really powerful rally in the waning weeks of 2020 and going into 2021. But there's not that kind of momentum right now. Analysts are, most analysts aren't really seeing anything like that. It's been a long year, and I don't know, at this point, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of juice in this market.
All right. Well, there are a couple of other headwinds also on the regulatory front, and that goes to who's banning crypto right now. And we have Russia and India on the docket. Usually we have China, but this time it's Russia and India. Russia's central bank is now looking at a complete ban on future crypto investments. This according to a Reuters report saying that market players are looking at a possible ban, and as the central bank in Russia works toward creating a potential ruble-backed central bank digital currency. Also, India is looking at potentially banning private cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin as they look to develop a digital rupee. I wonder, Christy, what do you feel is the significance of, more central banks, more governments around the world looking to put an end to Bitcoin?
Well, this is something that we've been hearing repeatedly over the last few years, and I tend to be a little more skeptical when it comes to, say, Russia, because they are hot and cold on Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And trying to really get them to settle on a position has been, I think, an interesting roller coaster to be on. I think that as countries keep looking toward a centralized digital currency, they're going to see private currencies as a threat. I think it's going to be tough, though, to really be able to censor private currencies like Bitcoin because of the very decentralized nature of the cryptocurrency itself. And I think they're going to be finding themselves playing whack-a-mole quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. We're also learning that despite India's hot and cold perception of Bitcoin, they are seeing huge trading volumes on their exchanges. We spoke to WazirX earlier this week, who are seeing a 17-fold growth in trading volumes. They're one of the top exchanges in India. And in terms of other news, we also heard from Elon Musk this week, who believes that Doge is actually a better method of payment than Bitcoin and is going to have Tesla accept Doge in exchange for merchandise. And I wonder, Christy, is it true that Doge is a better form of payment than Bitcoin?
I think that Elon is experimenting with some wishful thinking on this one. He is a very big investor in Dogecoin, so of course it would have, I think, a very positive effect for him. As we all know, as he has been named the Time Magazine
Is he an investor in Doge? I mean, he's an investor in Bitcoin. I mean, in terms of Tesla and SpaceX.
Oh, he's been on the Doge train for the last year, and every time he mentions it, it goes up. And this is another example of him mentioning it, probably expecting it to go up. What he said was, fundamentally, Bitcoin is not a good substitute for transactional currency. And he said, even though it was created as a silly joke, Dogecoin is better suited for transactions. And the reason why his reasoning behind this, he said, was that the transaction volume of Bitcoin is low and the cost per transaction is high. And he added that Bitcoin is more suitable as a store of value, which is why its investors want to hold on to it and not sell it or use it for transactions. And I think there are a few things you need to unpack here. First, am I going to say that Bitcoin is going to take over the world? Not necessarily. But what I am going to say is that the notion that Dogecoin is fundamentally better suited for transactions is about as silly as the meme itself. So first, let's all remember that at its core, Dogecoin's fundamentals are based on Bitcoin. It's a fork of the Bitcoin code, so they're genetically family. The big difference between them on a technical level is that Bitcoin's been building and evolving over the past 12 years, whereas Dogecoin's development has basically been out to pasture for the past 7 years until it, suddenly got popular this summer thanks to Elon Musk and his great big Twitter platform. Now he's starting to get that ball rolling again, though it has yet to be seen if anything substantial will actually come of that development. So let's look at the two things he said that are the reasons why Bitcoin doesn't work. He says, the transaction volume of Bitcoin is low. Okay, so how low? Well, in the last 24 hours, the Bitcoin blockchain, and we're just talking the base layer here, processed 256,019 transactions. And how many did Dogecoin process? 21,506. So Bitcoin processed 12 times as many transactions as Dogecoin. And the value of those transactions was worth over $16 billion compared to Doge's 158.1 million. So yeah, it's got more transaction volume than Doge. Let's now consider that there are second layer protocols being built on top of Bitcoin that helps to offload some of that transaction volume. On the Lightning Network alone, there's a network capacity of over $154 million. That's almost enough capacity to run the entire volume of Dogecoin's transaction value yesterday. Now, let's look at his second point. The cost per transaction is high. The on-chain transaction fee for Bitcoin over the last 24 hours was a whopping $1.92. Yeah. Staggering. And it's been there since mid-July. Granted, it's higher than Dogecoin's average fee of 34 cents, but let's look at the reason for that. Fees are based on what the market is willing to pay, and as more people choose to transact on a base layer like Bitcoin or Dogecoin, they have to compete with each other to have their transactions included in a block. More people use Bitcoin. So yeah, the competition's a little higher and the fees are a little higher. Dogecoin at this point in its life cycle has fewer transactions needing to be processed. But what if everyone suddenly took Elon's advice and started to use Doge instead of Bitcoin for payments? The fees would go up. In fact, when Musk first started hit the Doge craze in May, fees spiked over $1, and they're now settling around the 50-cent mark, and they used to be at like under a cent. What scaling solutions have they come up with on Dogecoin? Who knows? Maybe they'll borrow something from Bitcoin. Because again, Bitcoin has the Lightning Network. And guess what the fees are there? Practically zero. So no, using Bitcoin for payments is still likely to remain a pretty solid payment option. At least it's probably better than Doge. There you go.
Pretty convincing. I think a lot of cryptocurrency projects are having the same problem and trying to figure out what to do about that scaling solution and limiting transaction fees once there's a lot of volume in transactions. So yet to figure that. On a side note, Turkish citizens are also facing high inflation and a plunging lira. They've been converting more funds into cryptocurrencies like Shiba Inu and Tether rather than into Bitcoin, which is commonly seen as an inflation hedge. Trading volume in the BTC Turkish lira currency pair on crypto exchange Binance totaled over 900 million in November, less than a fifth level of the SHIB lira value of almost 5.3 billion and Tether lira's near 5.6 billion.